Hey everybody, it's David Pingree. Thanks for tuning in for another garage build here on RacerX Online. So this is a pretty special project, probably one of the most extensive we've ever done with the help of Jay Clark. I found this bike through a buddy of mine at my fire department who had bought it years and years ago. And when he was telling me about it, he said, yeah, this is Mickey Diamond's old bike. And I hear that a lot, like, you know, people that bought old factory racers bikes. And I'm like, yeah, sure it is. Well, he showed me the pink slip, and it actually is. He used to work for Diamond Construction, Mickey's dad, back in the day before he got into the fire service. Picked up this bike. In '92, Mickey was racing GPs for Honda, but he did some 500 Nationals and some 250 Supercross over here. This was one of the bikes he used to ride to get ready for those Supercross rounds. So needless to say, it was pretty beat up, lots and lots of hours on it. But we thought we could do a cool project. You know, in '92, Jean-Michel Bayle was the champion, and those bikes were beautiful. So we tried to use that as our kind of our muse for this build, and I think it came out pretty great. But it wasn't without a whole lot of work. I've never done a build this old, and when we started digging into it, you know, it was like a money pit. Everything that could be wrong with it was. The frame was stretched and cracked. The foot peg holes were elongated out, so the pegs were wobbling around in there. So it literally had to come down. We had to do a lot of welding and fixing up on the frame. So let me just run through some of the parts and pieces we used, because it was a lot of work top to bottom. So wrench rabbit, this is where you start out, because a motor this old, even though it ran, who knows how well it was maintained. It was obviously time for a fix. So the wrench rabbit comes with the complete hot rods kit, the full bottom end, all the parts and pieces you need. A Vertex piston goes in. The crank works guys, they balanced it and added a little bit of material to get rid of some of the vibration for us. We put an FMF exhaust on it. Again, even that is pretty tough to find these days. So big thanks to Little D and the boys over there coming through with this thing. Supersprox took care of our sprocket and chain needs. We put on a Moto Tassinari V-Force reed block, which is kind of a go-to on a two-stroke for us. And Pivot Works helped a lot with, you know, just all of the bushings, bearings, cable. I mean, you name it. Everything was worn out and needed to be replaced. So steering stem bearing kit, linkage rebuild kit, swing arm rebuild kit, wheel bearings, all of it, all from Pivot Works. So big thanks to those guys. Dunlop tires came through and hooked up tires for it. Went with the MX3S, which is a little better than what even JMB himself was using back in the day. Another big contributor was All Balls Racing. So despite the silly name, they make a carb rebuild kit that was an absolute necessity. This thing was worn out and beat up. New throttle cable, clutch cable, front and rear caliper master cylinder brake rebuilds. These things were so hammered just from time that we really needed to go through those. Brake pins as well. Faster USA took care of our wheels. So they did a Cerakote treatment on the hubs. It's a stock hub. Just Cerakoted it, and then we bought some wheels and they put them together for us. So big thanks to Faster USA. Those guys helped out a lot. Complete Hinson clutch setup. Tusk off-road helped as well. The front and rear rotors, front and rear brake lines as well. We had to manufacture our rear line just because we couldn't find one. We searched every corner of the internet, and there were some parts and pieces that were tough to get. That was one of them. Front brake lever as well as Tusk, and as is the shift lever. Uni filter, UFO plastic. This is the nuclear red or whatever they called it. It's that distinct pink color from that year, and let me tell you, it's tough to match. Trying to find this seat, we ordered one out of China. Again, we were searching all over the globe. So we finally, our buddy over at Moto Seat tracked one down that would match and work, and he built it for us. So big thanks to him. Clark Manufacturing. If you're doing a project and you need to find a stock tank, you can find them in different colors, you know, so if you're trying to make a Yamaha look like an old yellow one or whatever, like we've done in the past, Clark Manufacturing. They hooked us up with this white one because the stock one was basically a shade of yellow, you know, when we got it. So that's a huge part of any build if you're trying to make a bike look good. So big thanks to the guys at Clark Manufacturing. ClarkMFG.com if you're looking for them. ICW went through our radiators. They were obviously bent and beat up. We straightened those out and reused them. Let's see what else we got here. A lot of work went into this. Works connection. We used caps, clutch, you know, bar clamps, clutch perch, a lot of their parts and pieces, the foot pegs. And we actually had to weld in the foot peg holes and re-drill them, and we were able to get these pegs on. The stock pegs are like the size of your thumb. They're tiny. It was crazy what we used to race with back in the old days. This is before my days, but anyway, now we've got some good works connection platforms on there. That'll be nice. San Diego powder coating hooked us up big. The frame, like I mentioned, had to be completely taken apart, welded up a bunch, and they powder coated it for us, so I appreciate that. Decal works came through on the graphics. We wanted it to look as close as we could to Jean-Michel Bayle's race bike that year. Obviously, we've got to add some logos for the companies that helped us. The factory teams were very simple back then, and we didn't want to promote cigarettes, so instead of Camel Supercross, we did a little works connection there. So anyway, we tried to make it look similar, and I think those guys did an awesome job. So thanks to them for their help, and trying to get everything to match the colors was tough as well. So Fuel Star got us a fuel assembly valve with a hose. We ran C12 VP race fuel in here. Motion Pro with the grip glue and throttle tube. We went to the Renthal, just the old school 7/8 bars. We did 971s with Renthal half waffle mediums or softs. That's kind of my go-to. That's what was popular in the day too. And another big contributor here, Bolt motorcycle hardware. These guys make really cool track kits specific to each brand of bike. So if you've got a KTM 250F, they make a track kit for it. It goes right in your toolbox, and it's got every nut and bolt you might need. They also make complete kits if you need to rebuild a whole bike, which is what we did here. So every nut and bolt on here is brand new from Bolt to the manufacturer's original specs, to the OE. And if you're building a bike up and you got all these new parts and pieces in plastic and you shined everything up and then you thread in these 26-year-old nuts and bolts, they're gonna look terrible. So the bolt kit is essential when you're building something like this. So big thanks to those guys. Great products. So it's a Cycler radiator cap on here. Those guys helped out with that. And then also a big thanks to Factory Connection. This suspension it had broken parts and pieces in the forks. The oil was like sludge, and in one of the forks there was hardly any oil in it. So this thing really needed some work, and those guys came through and rebuilt it and made it spot on. So we're gonna check that out today, along with everything else. I'm excited to get this on the track, and let's have some fun. All right, well, what a trip to go back in time like this and jump on a bike that's similar to what they were racing on in the day. And a couple of things that stood out for me: it feels smaller. You know, I've noticed that of old bikes from the 90s. They were just a little more compact, which is nice for me. The things will turn really sharp. You know, I mean, you can see the steering stop goes all the way over. I don't know why modern bikes don't do that as much, but it was really noticeable how sharp the thing will turn. And I was blown away with this engine. Even though it's, you know, 26 years old or whatever, the roll on out of the turns was really good. You could come right out of a turn, just roll this thing on, and when it would pick up, it would take off. You know, it was nice. Really fun engine. A little bit rich, but we did a jetting change, or mapping change, as you would call that these days. Got it sharpened up. Suspension was a little soft initially. We just turned the clickers in a little bit, and it was pretty good. So just really fun to get back and jump on one of these. You know, if you're into vintage racing, man, what a cool, to go out and race with a bunch of other bikes like this on one of these would be a ball. So I'll look into that. I want to really thank the companies that got behind this, because it was way more work than I thought when we started. And I just really appreciate all the companies involved. Pivot Works, Wrench Rabbit, all those companies, especially a lot of time and effort into this motor. So thanks so much. I think it turned out great. I hope we did Jean-Michel Bayle proud if he's out there watching. Vive la France, or whatever. And we'll see you guys on the next build.